You didn't start watching it because you were weak. You started because it was quiet, predictable, always available, a place where no one asked for anything, and nothing looked back. At first, it felt like a refuge, a way to escape pressure, loneliness, the ache of being needed without being understood. But slowly, the stillness stopped being peace. It became silence. Not the good kind, the kind that echoes back emptiness. You don't even remember when the screen became a habit. You just know it's been years, and it hasn't made you stronger. It's made you smaller. Porn is a leaking vessel. At first, it looks like it will carry you. Then you realize you're not sailing, you're sinking. Quietly, consistently. You're not steering your life anymore. You're drifting. Your days blur. Your energy dims. Your eyes avoid mirrors. And deep down, there's this subtle guilt you can't name. Not because of what you've seen, but because of what you've lost. Time, presence, fire. You feel it in the mornings when you're tired without reason. You feel it at night when your chest is full but your heart is hollow. Zeno of Citium lost everything in a shipwreck. His journey didn't begin with ambition. It began with destruction. That wreck didn't make him bitter. It made him begin, because some men don't wake up until something they relied on falls apart. For you, that wreck might not be physical. It's emotional, psychological. The slow unraveling of your ability to connect, to concentrate, to care. Porn didn't just hijack your desire. It started eroding your ability to live with it. You mistook stimulation for intimacy. You confused sedation with calm. You started surviving what you were meant to lead. There's no judgment here, only recognition. You feel numb not because you're broken, but because you've been overdosed on illusion. Pleasure without presence. Access without meaning. Yes. You've been rewiring your brain to chase something that disappears the second it ends. And the damage isn't in the act, it's in the delay. The delay to start living again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death a man should fear, but never beginning to live." Porn delays that beginning, keeps you frozen, keeps you sedated, keeps you watching when you were meant to walk. But here's the truth. Zeno didn't rebuild by swimming back to the wreck. He let it go. Because when something has already abandoned you, holding on is no longer loyalty, it's self-betrayal. The question isn't whether porn is wrong. The question is whether it's worthy of the man you're still becoming. And if you're quiet enough, still enough, honest enough, you'll know the answer. Are you ready for chapter 1? It starts subtly, not with addiction, but with repetition. A screen, a surge, a release, then silence. You convince yourself it's harmless, just a break, just a reset. But over time, the pattern stops being a choice. It becomes a loop. And inside that loop, something deeper shifts. You stop engaging with what's real. You stop reaching for what requires effort. You begin to anticipate reward without presence, without intimacy, without risk, and it trains you to expect life to work that way. Fast, predictable, painless. But life doesn't work like that. Neither does love. Your brain starts rewriting its own wiring. Each time you choose the image over the interaction, you teach it that connection isn't necessary, just stimulation, just speed, just the next climax. It's all dopamine without oxytocin, all tension without tenderness. You're not bonding with anyone. You're feeding a circuit that rewards solitude and punishes patience. You don't even notice it at first, but gradually you lose tolerance for real intimacy. You avoid slowness. Eye contact feels invasive. Emotional presence feels heavy. You begin to panic when things get too real. Because real doesn't skip, real doesn't rush. Real asks you to stay, and inside that digital silence, you lose yourself. You stop seeing yourself as a man worthy of being loved. You become someone to manage, someone to distract, someone to consume. The mirror reflects not a lover, but a spectator, not a builder, but an observer. You start believing the lie, that it's safer to be alone than to be rejected, that it's better to watch than to risk being seen, that your value is in performance, not presence. Porn becomes the echo chamber where only your impulses speak, and your worth forgets how to reply. But Stoicism doesn't call you to suppress this. It calls you to see it, with clarity, with calm, with courage. True discipline isn't clenching your fists and holding your breath. It's breathing deeply and asking, what is this costing me? Not in shame, but in truth. Because what's at stake isn't morality, it's identity. It's your ability to feel without escaping, to want without needing, to sit in silence without reaching for distraction. The world will never tell you this, because your disconnection is profitable. Your numbness feeds their metrics. But your soul, it's waiting, not for more pleasure, for presence. And you're not far from it, just quiet enough to notice how far you've drifted, and close enough to return, one small moment at a time. Most men don't even realize they've been bracing for years. Shoulders tight, jaw locked, chest slightly armored, the body pretending to be relaxed while the nervous system stays alert, waiting for the next surge, the next escape, the next hit of arousal masquerading as relief. Porn doesn't just affect your mind, it speaks to your body, and your body listens. Every viewing is a signal. Stay ready, stay stimulated, don't settle, don't rest. And so your nervous system never does. It forgets how. You don't just crave porn when you're aroused. You crave it when you're anxious, when you feel small, when the world is too quiet. Because it's not about desire anymore. It's about escape. A ritual. A way to manage emotion when you were never taught how to feel it. But the more you reach for it, the more your body believes the world isn't safe unless it's stimulated. You start interpreting boredom as danger, stillness as threat. Real intimacy is confusion, because it doesn't come with edits, angles, or guarantees. Real moments aren't polished. They're unpredictable, and unpredictability makes you flinch. Physiologically, it's a trap. Constant exposure to artificial arousal locks you into a sympathetic state. Fight, flight, or freeze. Your body keeps scanning, comparing, craving, and no matter how much you consume, there's no finish line. Just more anticipation, more emptiness, and slowly you stop being able to relax even when you're alone, even when you want to, even when there's nothing to fear but your own unrest. No one tells men this. They frame quitting porn as moral, as religious, as a purity badge. But at the core, it's about nervous system regulation. It's about healing the part of you that forgot how to exhale, the part that thinks love must be earned by hiding, that peace is for someone else, that stillness means something's wrong. Quitting is not about punishing yourself. It's about telling your body, you are no longer in danger. It's a long message, but your nervous system hears it. Every time you resist the screen, every time you meet the craving with breath instead of blame. You don't have to conquer the urge. Just slow it. Just notice it. Just let your body relearn the safety of being, of not reacting, of not running. You're not fragile. You're untrained. And training begins with remembering. There is nothing to prove, and no one chasing you anymore. You weren't made for excess. Not the kind that numbs, not the kind that keeps you chasing instead of building. Porn offers intensity, but masculinity is forged in depth, in rhythm, in restraint. Every time you open that screen, you're choosing the fast over the foundational, the urgent over the enduring. And you feel it, even if you've never said it out loud. That ache after, that heaviness, that quiet regret. Because deep down, your body knows what your soul has been trying to whisper. This isn't it. Porn speaks to your lower instincts. Speed, novelty, quantity. But manhood, real, sacred, weathered manhood, is built on continuity. It doesn't need 10 choices. It just needs one it can trust. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind when you die. It's about what you build while you live. Every choice you make is a brick in that foundation. And when you keep choosing the screen over the struggle, you start disqualifying yourself. Not from women, from intimacy, from self-respect, from the parts of your life that require presence instead of performance. You begin to feel emotionally sterile, like you can't plant anything that lasts. You might smile, you might flirt, you might even love, but nothing roots because you're not present. You're watching life like it's another clip, meant to excite you, not invite you. And over time, that void grows. You stop believing you're the kind of man who creates peace. You start believing you're only good for reaction. And that belief starts to shape the way you show up, or don't. The Stoics understood this tension, that every man seeks to possess what he secretly fears to be. We consume domination because we fear softness. We crave control because we've lost connection. But letting go of porn isn't about shame. It's about authorship, about becoming the man who writes his own desire instead of outsourcing it. It's about choosing presence when it's hard, choosing reality when it's messy, choosing depth when it's slow. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be honest. Is this war between your instincts and your integrity still worth fighting? Or is it time to end it? Not with punishment, but with clarity. Because clarity is what builds legacy. And legacy doesn't come from what you consume. It comes from what you carry, what you endure, and what you refuse to escape from anymore. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like exposure, like standing naked, not physically, but emotionally. The first days without the screen aren't filled with pride. They're filled with restlessness, irritation, emptiness, because you're no longer medicating your silence. You're meeting it. And that silence doesn't flatter you. It confronts you, reminds you of the loneliness you've ignored, the grief you've delayed, the desires you've buried. But that confrontation is where sovereignty begins. True emotional sovereignty isn't loud. It doesn't demand applause. It looks like a man sitting on his own bed, phone untouched, hands still, breathing slowly through the ache of wanting something he no longer trusts. It looks like choosing not to escape, even when every part of you screams for distraction. It's not about being strong. It's about being honest, asking yourself, why am I reaching? What am I avoiding? Not with guilt, with awareness. Zeno said, the goal of life is living in agreement with nature, but nature doesn't mean instinct. It means alignment with your higher order, your internal compass, your sacred pattern. Instinct will tell you to consume. Nature tells you to build. Instinct seeks urgency. Nature honors patience. Instinct escapes pain. Nature transforms it. And when you align with nature again, the craving loses its crown. You stop needing permission to feel. You stop fearing what rises inside you. And you start remembering, pain is not the enemy. Panic is. Stoicism isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of stillness within it. To sit in your emptiness without reaching. To stand in your ache without flinching. Porn used to be your silence filler, the thing you used to avoid the depth of your own aloneness. But now, there's just silence, not emptiness, space, room to breathe, to rebuild, to remember that you're still here, that your strength was never in denial, it was in endurance. This is what sovereignty feels like, not power over others, power over reaction, not control through tension, but clarity through calm. It doesn't look like much on the outside, but inside, something changes. You stop bracing, you stop pretending, you stop consuming, and you start choosing. Not because it's easy, but because you've decided this is what returning to yourself looks like. Lust is loud, but desire, real desire, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand. It returns like warmth after a long winter, slowly, gradually, after the numbness fades. When you quit porn, you don't become cold. You become clear. The fog lifts, the static quiets. You begin to notice again the way a woman speaks, the pauses between her words, the subtle way she turns her head when she's thinking, things you forgot how to feel, because they weren't pornographic. They were human. You start to want her, not as an object, not as a fantasy, but as a presence, someone with breath, with thought, with mystery. Not something to conquer, but something to understand. And it feels foreign at first, slower, gentler, but stronger. You're no longer chasing novelty. You're sensing depth. Your body begins to speak a different language, one built not on hunger, but on harmony. You're no longer searching for high intensity. You're searching for honesty. And for the first time in a long time, you feel safe wanting someone. Because it's not about escape anymore. It's about connection. Physiologically, your brain starts to recalibrate. Dopamine finds balance. Oxytocin rises. The circuits of craving loosen their grip, and something subtler takes its place. The capacity to wait, to witness, to bond. You begin to enjoy the buildup, the pauses, the in-between moments. Not because you're suppressing anything, but because you're no longer starving. Lust kept you malnourished. Real desire feeds you slowly, but it feeds you wholly. In Stoicism, desire isn't the enemy. Confusion is. And what porn did was confuse your hunger, made you believe you wanted flesh, when what you needed was feeling, made you believe you were lonely for stimulation, when what you missed was being seen. But now, clarity returns. Desire no longer owns you. It moves through you with intention, with presence, with calm. It doesn't rush, it doesn't prove, it doesn't beg, it waits. And in that waiting, you remember, this is not about her. This is about becoming the kind of man who no longer runs from what's real. And what's real doesn't overwhelm you anymore. It invites you back into your own depth, not to consume, but to care, not to dominate, but to dwell. You haven't lost your edge. You've just traded the chaos of lust for the discipline of desire, and that's not weakness, that's mastery. A man watched, and then he watched again, until the watching became who he was, until the reflection in the mirror no longer moved unless the screen told him to. Porn doesn't just take your energy, it takes your authorship. It turns you from a participant into a spectator, from a creator into a consumer. You stop living your masculinity. You start observing it, mimicking it, trying to feel it through someone else's performance. But masculinity was never meant to be watched. It was meant to be witnessed, quietly, in how you walk, in how you stay, in how you say nothing and mean everything. There's nothing masculine about consumption. There's nothing sovereign about performance. The man who needs an audience to feel powerful is already disconnected, but the man who walks alone, who leads himself, who doesn't flinch when no one's watching, that's the man who's rebuilt, not by being admired, but by remembering. Remembering that presence is the only proof of strength, that chasing approval will always cost you peace, that performance ends, but presence remains. When you stop feeding the voyeur in your mind, something painful happens. You remember how long you've been gone. You feel how far you've drifted from your own body, your own choices, your own breath. But that pain is sacred, because it's yours, and once it's yours, and you can carry it with dignity. You're not performing anymore. You're returning, slowly, without spectacle, without apology. Porn made you forget that you were already enough, not because you were impressive, but because you were here, present, grounded, whole. You forgot that masculinity isn't proven through dominance. It's revealed through consistency. You forgot that your value isn't in how much you arouse, it's in how deeply you remain. But now that memory is coming back. With every craving you observe without obeying, with every lonely night you endure without sedating, with every quiet morning you rise and don't reach for the screen. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself," and mastery doesn't shout, it doesn't pose, it doesn't need to be seen. It simply chooses, over and over, not to betray itself. The man you're becoming isn't chasing freedom through indulgence. He's earning it through restraint, not as punishment, but as return to the part of you that never needed to watch, only to walk, to stay, to stand still, and to be seen, not for what you consume, but for what you carry without fear. It doesn't happen like a movie. There's no dramatic music, no grand realization, just a moment, a glance. She looks at you, and for the first time in years, you don't look away, not because you feel confident, but because you feel clean, not perfect, just honest, present. You're not hiding, you're not shrinking, you're not scanning her face for approval or fear. You're just there, and that presence is quiet, but it speaks volumes. The hidden cost of porn is this: the slow erosion of your ability to hold eye contact without apology. You forget how to be seen without flinching, because shame doesn't come all at once. It creeps in clip by clip, day by day, until you start believing that your desire is something to manage, not something to honor, until you start associating closeness with guilt, touch with tension, love with performance, and by the time you realize what's happened, it feels like you've forgotten how to be in the room, with her, with anyone, with yourself. Quitting porn is not about moral superiority. It's not about being pure. It's about giving yourself permission to be human again, to be touched without needing to perform, to be wanted without needing to earn it, to feel without filtering. And that begins in the eyes, because the eyes are where truth lives and shame dies. That first moment of intimacy, when you've gone long enough without the screen, feels different. You're nervous, not because you're ashamed, but because you're awake. You're not dissociating, you're not fantasizing, you're not trying to escape, you're just there. You feel the warmth of her hand, the rhythm of her breath, the way her gaze holds you. And for once you don't feel dirty. You feel whole. You still flawed, still learning, but whole. Zeno taught that to live with virtue is to live undivided. Porn divided you from your body, your presence, your calm. It split your attention, fragmented your masculinity, turned your desire into a compartment you had to hide. But that division is healing, slowly, quietly. With every day you stay sober, with every moment you look someone in the eye and feel worthy of being seen. This is your silent return, not to her, to you. You're not proving anything, you're just present. You're not asking for permission, you've already given it. And in that stillness, In that gaze, in that clean, steady breath, you remember, this is what it means to be a man. Not the kind who watches, the kind who remains, the kind who meets her eyes and doesn't look away. Zeno didn't plan on becoming a philosopher. He wasn't searching for virtue. He was shipwrecked, left with nothing but the silence of his own thoughts, the ruins of his expectations, and a choice. Either mourn what was lost, or rebuild with what remained. That's where this journey begins. Not in strength, in surrender. Not in clarity, in collapse. And maybe you didn't hit rock bottom, but something brought you here. Some quiet moment when you realized, this isn't just about porn. It's about your life, about how long you've been disappearing inside of it. When you quit, you don't just stop a habit. You confront a mirror. One that doesn't flatter, one that doesn't lie. It shows you what you've been hiding from. The loneliness beneath the lust, the boredom beneath the craving, the ache beneath the impulse. And at first that mirror hurts, because you finally see how much time you spent trying not to feel. But slowly, you see something else. Not just the pain, the man, the one who stayed, the one who kept showing up, even in his absence. The one who never stopped needing peace. He just forgot how to ask for it. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Porn is imagined relief, imagined intimacy, imagined comfort. But reality, as quiet as it is, carries something deeper. It doesn't hit, it doesn't rush, it doesn't thrill, but it heals. It stays. It teaches you how to breathe again, how to feel again, how to want again. Not with shame, but with presence. This isn't a sermon, it's a return to the parts of you that never needed to escape, a return to your clarity, to your calm, to your courage, because the man you're becoming doesn't need to shine. He just needs to be transparent to his own dignity, like a clean window, letting the morning light in. No filters, no performances, just quiet, just presence, just truth. And if you're still standing here, still listening, still breathing, then hear this. You haven't lost yourself. You've just stopped hiding. And that is the beginning.